The Sackler family, the incredibly wealthy family behind Purdue Pharma, is facing 1,600 different lawsuits because of the opioid crisis in America. And through some of these investigations, it has been determined that the Sackler family not only profited handsomely off of the endorsement and the push for OxyContin, they also planned to profit handsomely off of rehabilitation efforts. So the business potential of adding addiction treatment to the mix, titled Project Tango, was illustrated in internal company charts and diagrams. So in these charts and in these documents, it was noted that pain treatment and addiction are naturally linked. Now remember, Purdue Pharma is in a lot of trouble because they purposely tried to hide the fact that OxyContin was an addictive drug. They were also pushing doctors to prescribe the drug, knowing that it could be harmful. The Sackler family's statements said the lawsuits ignore the fact that the Sackler family has long been committed to initiatives that prevent abuse and addiction, citing what it characterized as a philanthropic donation from the family to an addiction research treatment center in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now, if you read that, you probably think, wait, that does sound familiar. Where did I hear that they were planning on donating $75 million to a rehabilitation center? Oh, that's right. Here, we talked about that just last week when we covered the settlement that Purdue Pharma struck with the state of Oklahoma. In fact, the $75 million contribution to be made over 5 years was a condition of the court-approved settlement of an opioid lawsuit brought by the Oklahoma Attorney General against Purdue. So they were trying to spin it as if, no, what are you guys talking about? We've been doing a lot of important work in helping to support these rehabilitation centers. No, you haven't. You had to do this as part of the condition of the settlement in that lawsuit with Oklahoma.
So let's talk a little bit more about Tango and cash. When they say pain treatment and addiction are naturally linked, that is a very important admission, because for a very long time, they've been saying, oh, no, OxyContin is not necessarily addictive at all. And it's the way that it does slow release of the medicine here prevents addiction. Meanwhile, they're like, well, we know it's addictive, so now let's try to figure out how to make money on the back end, right? We make money on the front end by getting people hooked. And what is it in the first place? Do you guys know what it is? The reason it's called an opioid is because it's opium. They legalized opium and they had people in suits sell it, and they bought off politicians, and that's not just Purdue, that's the entire drug industry. They're the #1 donors to politicians because they're selling drugs. They legalized the worst kind of drugs. They made the safest drugs like marijuana illegal. They made the most addictive drugs legal. They bought off all the politicians. And so, but now we know that they knew all along. And so they talk about a funnel. The fat end of the funnel was labeled pain treatment, and the narrow end was labeled opioid addiction treatment. That means let's get everybody hooked. That's the top of the funnel, the fat end of the tunnel, okay? And once we do, we'll filter down the people that need treatment for that addiction we created in the first place. So we make money at the top of the funnel and all the way through the funnel to the end. In fact, they call it that they would be, quote, end-to-end pain provider. Wow, I mean, that's a Goldman Sachs level move. See, that's three-dimensional chess. When Goldman Sachs created junk assets based on the housing bubble, and they made money on those assets, and then they turn around and shorted the market and bet against the assets, and that was end-to-end cash for Goldman Sachs as our economy cratered. In this case, it's end-to-end money for Purdue while people get hooked on opioids, and a lot of them, tens of thousands of them, died.
So I gotta give you more details on what we've been finding through these investigations. So manufacturers funded front groups that were disguised as unbiased sources of cutting-edge medical research and information. So in other words, physicians were paid as consultants to further spread their message. The companies claimed that opioids were safer than high doses of acetaminophen and other anti-inflammatory agents that were there, that there was a minuscule risk of addiction. So there were other painkillers that people could have used that were not addictive. But through the push and the pressure from Purdue Pharma, doctors decided to prescribe these painkillers that are addictive and of course have been very destructive for families throughout the country. And also, since OxyContin came on the market, more than 200,000 Americans have died of overdoses related to prescription opioids. As reports of overdoses grew, Richard Sackler urged the company to blame the patients. So here's a direct quote.
Wow.
"We have to hammer on abusers in every way possible. They are the culprits and the problem. They are reckless criminals." Disgusting. That is what Purdue Pharma was doing.
So they've lost the country here because this does not affect only a certain demographic. It affects all Americans, white, black, Latino, it doesn't matter. And they also lost conservative media, which is usually the top defenders of corporate wrongdoing. Why? Rush Limbaugh is also an addict. So they got no one left now, and they're in a world of trouble, as well they should be, because in a sense, they put this toxic stuff in our bloodstream for decades. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.